Hey guys, I have with you my friend Megan, and you guys, and I'm so excited for her to be here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to talk about, we always talk about like health and yoga and like meditation and stuff like that. Like, how did you start to get into all this? Like, were you always into it, like at a young age?
Great question. First of all, thanks so much for having me. I'm fascinated by this whole video podcast thing. Yeah, no, I was raised by a mother who was interested in exposing us to all religions. So my parents are mixed. My dad is Irish Catholic, very Catholic from Boston, raised in the Catholic school system, went to Boston College. My mother is from the South. She's African American. So when my parents split, when I was 9, she started reading to us on Sundays from every religious text. So we would read the Tao of Pooh, or we would read Deepak Chopra, or we would read
Oh,
Joseph Campbell. And my mom listened to a lot of Abraham Hicks when I was a kid. Um, so I had a lot of exposure to it, but it wasn't part of my path. I went to a pretty straight-laced school in the South where like I was a sorority sister. So like there wasn't
wow,
really
okay.
religion. It was mostly vodka.
Yep.
And yeah, I pretty much made it to 29 and had my awakening at that point. I had like built this perfect life for myself that I thought I was striving to achieve, very much like on track and in line with what my sorority sisters were doing. I got a boyfriend. I got a little house in Virginia. I had 2 dogs. I had a career that I loved as a real estate agent. And all of a sudden, sort of like the threads started to show in the sweater that I had so swiftly knitted. And I really was unhappy. And sort of the undercurrent of that story is I had been suffering from depression from the age of like 21. And at the age of 21, they gave me 1 pill. And by the time I was 29, I was on 4 pills.
Oh, wow.
And so I was a firm believer in medicine. When they gave me my first pill, I was like, you know, so much better than I had ever been.
Yeah.
I was interested in school. My grades went up a full point in my GPA. And so I thought it was magic. You couldn't tell me otherwise.
Yeah.
But when I was unhappy and still taking 4 pills at that age, I made a significant life change. Left DC, left my career, left my boyfriend, left my house, took 1 dog, and I moved to New York. And that's really when my spiritual journey started.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, that was a
A
lot.
really long story
No,
to
no,
say.
that's amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. Were you talking about, you talking about Adderall or with the
Yeah,
GPA?
sure. I'll give you the whole breakdown. No, actually in college I didn't. I mean, I took Adderall for tests. I was never prescribed it in college. I had Lexapro to help regulate my depression, and that's what really helped me immediately.
Okay.
I felt the effects, and then it was actually after college that I got prescribed Adderall, and from this whack job of a doctor in Boston who I now know is like really a drug dealer.
Yeah, it's like a fine line. Yeah.
It is a pretty fine line, and like the places I used to go to get Adderall were these like really backdoor basement doctors' offices. Um, and I could speak to my personal feelings and opinions about Adderall, but I won't because that'll take too long in this podcast. But
Yeah.
then once I was on that, I also told my doctor that I had been suffering from insomnia from the age of 14. For whatever reason, I would always wake up at 2:59 a.m. and stay up till 5 a.m.
It was always on the dot?
Always on the dot. It would flash the clock, and I would be like,
so weird.
It's terrifying. If anyone suffers from insomnia, I relate. It's so terrifying to me.
Wow.
Awake during those hours, and then you just never arrested for the rest of the day. So it was like this vicious cycle of course I was distracted and unable to focus in school because I would have this terrible sleep. So anyway, they added another pill to the regimen. So I was taking Lunesta to sleep. And then people who have chronic low-grade depression will hit life crises and then enter into what's called double depression. Double depression is basically a paralyzing condition where you're unable to really get out of bed, suicidal thoughts. So I've actually had that twice in my life. And the second time, my doctor said I would never get off medication. Just it's such a serious condition that getting off medication, they worry that you would just, that it would be suicidal. So of course the story is that I didn't listen to my doctor. And I found a way. It wasn't my intention at the start. My intention really was just to like ground myself spiritually. So I started with Oprah's book list.
Oh, cool.
This was in January of 2015, so 3 years ago. And I just got every book I could on spirituality. And I started doing yoga in my studio apartment in Brooklyn. And it kind of was a shut-in. It was like I ended a bad relationship and I shut myself into my Brooklyn apartment, did yoga, read books on spirituality, and exercised. And it just started in that way.
Wow. Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, do you think a lot of coaches, like intuitive coaches, I think your background definitely dictates like, what draws to you, right? I feel like that's common what I've noticed amongst a lot of coaches.
Absolutely. If I've learned one thing, it's that coaches are in it or in the game of personal development for themselves.
Right.
You want to be a student of life, so you tend to attract people who you're gonna be able to help because you have that experience in your fabric or in your database, so to speak. So I feel like I've been through a lot, pretty much the gamut of what I think most women experience, particularly American women. So yeah, it's all part of that. What I think I am here to help other people with.
Yeah. Interesting. So, wow, we can go so many ways here. So, like, do you, like, in your opinion, do you think, like, like everyone should, because I think a lot of people are, like, kind of skeptical when it comes to, like, spirituality and, just, like, meditation and stuff like that. Like, do you think that, as a society, we're going to, like, that's going to become a lot more common where it'll become as mainstream as, like, going to the gym, for example?
Wow, that's a really great question. I think it's there for people who are seeking it. I don't necessarily think there is a mass awakening on their horizon. I think certainly there's an awakening happening, but I travel to other parts of the country and I'm like, no.
Oh, yeah. We're more progressive here.
In New York, we're exposed to everything. But I guess, like, in my opinion, I don't think it's necessary for everyone. And I guess, I don't think it's necessary for you. There's just so many different pathways to choose in life. I know super successful people who aren't meditators.
Oh, really?
I just know for me, that's what I needed. And for me, my path is a spiritual path. And so that's what I wanted to know in terms of what I've laid out before myself for this lifetime. But I think that there are a million different ways to experience and express what you learn in this lifetime. And, all of them are valid. All of them are just fine. Like if you wanted to grow up as a farmer in Kansas and, I think that's just fine. It's, I guess the more I get to do readings with people or coaching sessions with people, the more I realize that we all sort of walk around in our own realities. And I just want to know. Really, it's like I'm fascinated. I just want to know how you form identity, how you've, came to make the decisions that you came to make, what blocks you, why we create these blocks, how we can overcome these blocks. That is like, if I could spend my life doing that one thing, I think it would be my curiosity would be fulfilled.
So do you think that we all are put on earth for we all have like a mission? Because I feel like a lot of times people aren't really sure like what they're put on earth for, right? I feel like a lot of people just kind of go about life just doing what like society tells them to do or their parents or what their peers tell them to do? Right.
Um, I So I think I want to like take the sting out of the word mission. I think mission is a very Americanized, war-driven understanding of what Earth is supposed to be. And it does put a lot of pressure on this idea of like finding what it is. I think a lot of us, particularly at this age, like between the ages of 25 and 35, you're really seeking to discover. And I think Earth experience is really just meant to be experience, period, at the end. But I think there is a specific paradigm or a specific like set list that you came to play in this lifetime that will help you sort of uncover these deeper learnings about your authenticity and your core soul self. So yeah, I think mission in the sense of like the passion that's behind what it is you choose to do is important to find.
Yeah. So how do you suggest for someone who is kind of like confused and not really sure what they want to do, but they just know what they're doing now isn't it?
Yes, that's such a great question. So I've done this wrong, like all like a lot of times. I called myself following my intuition by quitting my job as a real estate agent. And at that time, I really thought I was going to be a writer. That's like what I was super passionate about. I wanted to be a journalist. I went to school for communications. And it turns out that that was just like a very limited perspective of what I was capable of. So I like set out to be a writer, and 6 months in, it wasn't very successful, and I pulled the plug because it was taking a very different direction. I obviously had this counseling aspect of me that wanted to grow as well, because my ego was so, or what I think is ego, was so fixated on that first idea. I was unwilling to let it go and let something else come in. So I think in general, we all have these like, we know what it is from a young age that really feeds us and like informs what we want to do. But it's these overlays of what society dictates as like the highest and best use of your skills that kind of steer us in the wrong direction. So like you could be someone who's a great advocate and really love like social activism. And so your parents are like, perfect. The way you make money doing that is being a lawyer. And that could kill your spirit. You have no idea how the lifestyle is very different from like what is like the life force behind social activism. And so I think the other part of it has to be how you want to like live your day and move your body is really like should be equally considered along with your skill set, and that's how your life should be designed in terms of a career. So I just really didn't know that life coaching was an option, I guess. So my advice to other people would definitely be to do an inventory on these times in your life when you're really in flow, where you feel like the most energy is coming through you, where you feel like you're the most inspired, and you end the day feeling exhausted in a good way. Like you're full on a mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual level. And keep track of that, and then sort of throw stuff against the wall like a designer and test things out. You don't necessarily, you shouldn't leave your job, actually. I could do it again. I wouldn't leave my job as abruptly as I did the first time. I would try things and see if it's even possible to do what it is that I think is going to succeed. Some people have the opposite problem. They won't try anything. I'm like rip off the curtain and like jump in feet first into the bare cold water and see if it works. But I think it's much more comfortable to just try things and fail in a comfortable, secure place and see what it is you like.
I guess like that's like what like how did you even hear about like life coaching to begin with, right? Because it sounds like, I mean, in New York there's like a ton of us around, but like how did you even like stumble upon it?
Great question. So I was waiting tables, and I ran into the high school editor of my school newspaper, and he asked me to write an article for him, and I was like, perfect. My like career as a writer is about to take off. But he asked me to go around the city and interview all of these alternative healers. And so when I did that, I interviewed Krista Reiki people and Rolfers and these like aura photography people, and they all sort of met me and were like, "Yeah, you get it. You're one of us."
Yeah.
And I was like, "What are you guys talking about?" And so that was really my first exposure to this like holistic health and wellness world. And so I was sent to the Open Center to go study there, and they identified me as an intuitive, and so they sent me to go study with a medium, and that's sort of how I spent a year with him developing this intuitive skill.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense. Cool.
And from that, sort of life coaching was the next thing. I mean, life coaching really, I was gifted the tuition for Landmark. So I think that's another way that you can know that you're on the right path. Generally, if there's something you need on your path, it's really like given to you or put right in front of you for you to take. For accomplishment coaching, which is the program that you did, I was called on the morning of the eclipse and at 9 a.m. and someone dropped out of the program, and then I could do it and as a participant. And I had been wanting to be in that program for a year and a half. So it just really like came out of this guy. It happens that way, I think. Well, sometimes.
Wow. Yeah, I think there's something about like things just come to you, right? And it sounds like everything just like I feel like everything happens for a reason, even if it's hard, it doesn't make sense like during it. It's like, okay, I had a crappy childhood and now here I am helping millions of people, right? So it's sort of like, it makes sense like in hindsight, but during it you're just like, this sucks.
But I guess we just don't really know what is meant. I guess life is about those times. It is about the up and down and like finding beauty and all of the things. It's so cliche, but there's really not a lot we can do about like the lessons that we come here to learn. And really there's always a time where you turn around and hand that back to someone who needs help doing it.
Yeah, that's deep. Wow. I guess what are you most grateful for like right now or today, I guess, or more recently?
What am I most grateful for? I'm really grateful for the community that's developed in this path. I was a person who was really a lone wolf. Like I would wake up in the morning and feel like I'm a badass, and I would put on a suit and I would have my own business, and I would go through my day really thinking that and being proud of myself for sort of like creating this life out of anger. I really wanted to prove to the world that I could do it and prove to my parents. I had a chip on my shoulder, and it didn't serve me because it made me really unhappy at the end of the day. So I isolated myself from women in particular. I just thought that women were kind of frivolous, which is crazy. Like now I only have female friends, and I have a lot of them, and they're all really on this like healer, artist path.
Wow.
And there's just so much there's so much flexibility in the feminine, I think, that I wasn't exposed to growing up. Even though I was raised by a woman, I was raised by an African American woman, and that I think came with a lot of context for her. She really had to operate in the world as this archetype. It was sort of overlaid on her. And I think she did a lot of work to overcome that. So.
Yeah. Wow. Oh man, it's so deep. I didn't realize. No, I mean, there's a lot. Like, I didn't realize we were going like this deep. Like,
me neither. Just like what felt like needed to be said about.
Yeah. I mean, I guess on that standpoint, like, do you think like as a society, like we're trending in the right direction, or do you think in a way like we have, it's not growing as much as you want it to?
In terms of fluidity and identity, for sure. I think we have, we're exposed to so many things now, like just the speed with which the transgender movement has come to the fore, and we've changed policies and laws around making this acceptable, is so promising in terms of our ability to now change as a body. I think the internet really, brings that, makes that possible for everyone.
That's true. Yeah, I think the internet definitely, it's good because I think it speeds things up a lot. It's the access to information is so quick that you don't really have a choice. Like if something happens, everyone will know about it.
It also democratizes things, the music industry, the
entertainment
industry, the information industry is totally, democratized. Whereas, it's a very powerful thing for 3 people essentially to have control over what kind of news we're consuming during the day. And I just the fact that that's not the model will allow for a lot of change to happen quickly.
Yeah. So do you think social media is like a good thing, or do you think it's like sort of, because I view it as, it's like kind of, I have like a love-hate relationship to it. It's like, oh, I get to impact a lot of people, but like 90% of the stuff is garbage. Like, like, I don't know.
I think it is, love-hate is like a perfect way to describe it, because I think it is definitely like addictive, and that can be a pain point. But it allows people to grow so much faster. Just imagine, like, I guess I would relate it to like the invention of the mirror. Before mirrors, we like couldn't see ourselves very clearly, except for like reflection in a pond, for example. But it allows us to identify in the public sphere and create that type of identity. And it's like essentially, I would say the best metaphor is like letting the ego like be freed, like aired out like laundry, essentially, because the persona that we put out there is obviously going to be our best version of ourselves, right? A friend of mine says like she hates looking at Instagram because she'll see the same person like posting healthy foods and then like eating ice cream by herself in her apartment, and it's like, that is kind of how it is,
That's a perfect example.
But I think people need to know that that's how it is on all levels.
That's true. Like, at work, or
just on all socioeconomic levels, there's no difference between someone who's like super poor and super rich. There's some habits that are different. Like, most people have cool personas on the outside.
Wow. So you mentioned that I know when we spoke, like you like writing and you're like kind of tapping into your creativity. How would you suggest for one to like get in touch with their like creative side? That's something that it's important for people to do.
Oh, that's such a good question too. I read this book by Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way. And I think that's the most enlightening book in terms of practices of getting into your creative habit. There's another book called The Creative Habit by the dancer Twyla Tharp. That's a lot more militant about how to get into your creative space, because that's the person she is. But I think the most important thing is to spend time alone, really get to the quiet place, but also like honor the things that inspire you. If it's like going to Sephora and trying all the lotions and smelling all the smells.
It works.
If it works, like make it a part of your practice. But what Twyla Tharp talks about is like setting that into practice. In other words, like having something that stimulates you to get into the zone, the mind zone. Like for an athlete, it might be putting on a certain pair of socks, and then it's like, oh, the light switches on, and now I'm this person.
It's like a routine, right? Sort of.
Yeah, a lot of it is about getting into character. For me, I have a lot of fear around being expressed creatively, so I just have to like show up and do it.
I think a lot of people that's the case.
Like,
because we're afraid of like criticism, or just like putting ourselves, just being vulnerable.
Absolutely. And
or just being different sometimes.
And we're different. We're all just different, and that's the beauty of being alive. But I guess what I've learned from a spiritual perspective personally is just that it's experimenting. It's like all experience, and like you really can't do it wrong. You can fail pretty hard, and it can hurt pretty bad, but it's not right or wrong. It's just
Yeah, so I mean, I guess like conceptually, like or intellectually, that makes sense. But I guess like how does one like develop like more of that thick skin where when you do fail, it doesn't like hurt so bad, or it just doesn't feel great? How would you suggest?
Well, Tony Robbins takes a cold shower every morning. I think that's a good way to sort of experience pain. Like, we have these ideas. We try to avoid pain, particularly in America. Hence why I was on medication for for 10 years. And pain is what it is really all about. If we could reframe pain in a way that was more palatable to people.
Yeah.
At the same time, I think unnecessary pain isn't the way to go. Like masochistic pain isn't what should be the goal for any society. Like running a marathon is great, but like there are some people take it to extremes and that can be addictive. But I think pain in terms of the ego being shattered, like humiliation, loss, feeling not good enough, that's the type of pain that we need to like run towards and see that as the illusion of fear. Will Smith says that on the other side of fear is everything you want.
Yeah.
And I've really found that to be true. It's like if we could associate moving through that fear or taking that action that you're really fearful of like stepping through the fire to be met by a waterfall of joy is like, it's really how it feels. You know, I'm sure you've experienced that in coaching.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like the cool thing about coaching is that, you know, when you see everyone else has their breakthrough, it helps you with your breakthrough because of the laws of attraction. We're typically, you know, we interact with people that, you know, on the same wavelength or that are doing similar things. So, you know, when you have your breakthroughs, I'm like, oh yeah, like that's one of my things too. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I'm inspiring to do that. That said, it's been my hardest thing. I have like crazy fears that nobody.
But then you do a lot too, though, which is crazy. So that just means the potential is so much more, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Yeah, I'm gonna try.
So what's something that you've done lately that you were afraid of, like maybe 2 years ago?
Yeah, right off the top of my head is taking ballet. And it's something I put down when I was 18 and I loved it. I did it every single day from the age of like 7 on. But someone sort of made fun of me for it. And I also started doing lacrosse, and it was really important at my high school to become varsity. So once I got to the varsity lacrosse team, I dropped it. And I just have gotten so many signs about going back to ballet class. And my story was, I'm too old. This is crazy. Like, what is this? I guess my whole mentality is like, what is this going to do for me financially? And particularly in New York, it's like, how can I turn this into a business? Basically, was my hesitation. And I got to class, and there were 2 6-year-old women there.
Wow.
And I loved doing it, and it was really this breakthrough of like, what am I gonna wait till I'm 80 and on my deathbed?
Or 60?
Or 60, yeah. And just like, you know, look back at the age of 30 and be like, I didn't go to dance class because I was afraid of being humiliated or not making money doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of times we make these decisions that would never make sense when you're 80 years old because of the context we're working within. In New York, we're like, well, does it pay my rent? No? Okay, then I can't do it. That's not how I'm going to prioritize my time. So, yeah, there's a lot of joy in ballet for me. And I would encourage people to have their creative thing going.
Yeah, that's a good point. So do you think that like we all, because I remember at one point like I felt like I wasn't like good at like anything, and it was like hard for me to find like what is that thing, right? Because I was always kind of like, you know, I did this or I did this, but I was never like really like amazing at it. It was always just like trying things, and yeah, I don't know. I guess like how does one find like that thing, like, even if it's a hobby that they're like good at? Because I felt like it took me a while to like find something, and I was like, oh wow, I'm like really good at this one thing.
Yeah, not be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Well, just what I hear you saying is like, you try something, and this is me too, like try something, you fail the first time, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be terrible at that, and like never pick it up.
Yeah.
But a great example for me was cooking, and I like loved messing around in the kitchen, and I had a boyfriend be like, you are literally terrible at cooking.
Oops, I shouldn't have told my girlfriend that.
He's no longer my boyfriend. I think we actually broke up that day.
Oh
he was
my
like,
God.
oh, you like your bacon crispy. And I was just like, what? I made this whole breakfast for him. I just am a type of person that wants to be like intuitive in the kitchen, so I don't read
Yeah, same.
directions.
I don't know either. She hates it. She's like, no, you have to stick to the. And I'm like,
The rules.
yeah. I'm just like, okay. I'm like, but my fried rice tastes better than yours. So.
I'll just eat anything that I make because I think it's cool. So I wouldn't feed it to other people. But yeah, I've worked really hard on cooking since then. And it's really an important part of I almost cook all my meals at this point because holistic health is so important to me.
Yeah.
But I was really bad at it at first, clearly, given the reviews I was getting. I think that is like such a good thing to bring up because I think we hold ourselves to such high standards in America that it prevents us from knowing that everyone starts at zero and you're gonna fail a lot of times. And you know, the statistics that aren't put out there enough, even though it's like a pretty common quote, is like Thomas Edison tried the light bulb 10,000 times before he got it right. And anything good and worthwhile requires a lot of failure.
Yeah. So you think, but for some reason in America, we also, it seems like where we have the most entrepreneurs as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting. Like, so why do you think that innovation, you know, in America is more than, let's say, like even Asian countries, right? Because I feel like Asian countries, it doesn't seem like there's as much like entrepreneurship.
I think in Asian countries, it's more about sense of duty and the collective.
Oh, right. Yeah. So individual.
I honestly don't think one is better than the other. I think we have a lot of entrepreneurs in America because it's the story that's advertised to us. I don't think we have a lot of successful entrepreneurs in America. And that's the reality. We have like a handful. Maybe there's like, you know, if you look at the Forbes list, there are only 100 people on there versus like everyone has the dream of being an entrepreneur in America. And I think that's sort of detrimental. There are like a lot of positives to choosing a career that you love and being paid by a company. So I don't know. I think the reason why we have a lot of entrepreneurs is because that's the dream that's advertised to us.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a free economy. We do have like the ability to exchange goods. And look, like the original concept of marketplace was entrepreneurs. You just had the thing that you sold, and then that made you an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know that it's for everyone. I know the people.
Definitely not.
I know the people who started Well and Good. I went to go see them speak, and they were like, "Listen, we were not well and we were not good for a long time. We were like preaching about wellness and holistic health, and here we are like slamming coffee and donuts at like 2 a.m. just to get this thing off the ground." And so I don't think the realities of being an entrepreneur are exposed enough. Rather, what's sold on social media is like free your time and like be your own person. And as you and I know, it's very difficult. You sacrifice a lot of things in order to be, you know, your own boss. So.
Yeah, that's for sure. Oh yeah, so I was gonna ask you about like nutrition related things because I think that's important in today's age. I guess, I mean, we can probably talk about this for hours, but I guess what are some like general guidelines of like how we can stay healthy in, you know, like New York City, for example?
I'm so glad you asked that because it's such a big part of my story. And I have been the person that was obsessed with like what I was putting in my mouth and exercising and making sure I was the right weight. But I think in this day and age, we are so flooded with information about what the right thing is to eat for you. And it is really, in my experience, a bio-individual journey. It has so much to do with epigenetics, what your ancestry is like, what your body is used to because of generations of what you're used to eating. A lot of your preferences for food are based in memory and not what your body actually desires. You just have these strong, deep connections about what makes you feel good. So a lot of people eat based on emotion. That's definitely my experience. It's a mood regulator. And so for me personally, what's important about holistic health is that we're in a day and age where the Western medical system isn't built to teach us health.
Yeah.
They're there to prevent us from dying. And
Right.
there's like, that's a massive miscommunication about like what the role of a doctor is.
Yeah.
And so I went to see, 7 different doctors from Columbia and Harvard, to help me with digestive issues, with eczema, with various other problems that seem to be unrelated, because they're all specialists that don't look at your entrance exam and see like what the holistic problem is. And for me, all of those things were resolved by figuring out my food allergies and removing gluten and dairy from my diet. And also making exercise a priority. So much can be done with the brain. Now there's studies that show that exercise and meditation can really rewire your brain to, reduce your stress level and retrain your responses to your external stimuli so that you can be more balanced. And that, if that had been told to me when I was 19, for example, going into the real world,
it's crazy.
you would have
so
saved.
Important.
Yeah, I did the calculation as to how much money I spent on doctors and medicines, and it was upwards of $80,000, which is money that I would love to have back.
Yeah.
So I'll just say, for me, what I do every day is when I wake up, I drink a full glass of water. Usually I'll have some bentonite clay or charcoal just to remove the toxins that build up in your body overnight. I found that my anxiety is highly related to the amount of toxins that I have in my body. I do seasonal detoxes. So every 3 months I'll do like a liver cleanse, or a series of colonics to get just all that toxic energy. And what happens when you remove everything from your gut lining, your liver dumps out toxins into the gut and allows you to eliminate them faster. And we're getting toxins from the environment, from the chemicals we use to clean our house, from the food that we're eating, from, even, being in the wrong environment, sitting still for too long can create toxic chemicals in the body. So that is what has allowed me to get off all prescription medication. And I feel, it's like such a distant memory for me to be so reliant on drugs. I feel amazing every day, and just like tough things come up all the time, but I'm like very well prepared to deal with them because I meditate every day and I eat a balanced nutrition. For me personally, that means not eating a lot of meat and sticking to mostly plant-based, but it's different. It's different for everyone. So
yeah. So I don't want to. This is probably going too much in the weeds, but like, so are you following like gut health? Is that something that you follow? Because I know that's like a trending, seems like something that's growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I take a probiotic, and I spend I buy the most expensive one because the more like 50 billion bacteria. It's adding good bacteria to your gut.
Right.
But the reasoning behind that is 90% of your serotonin is produced in your gut.
Right.
So if there are any blockages that are built up, which typically happens if you eat sugary foods or processed foods, or drink too much coffee, can cause plaquing in the gut. Your brain literally is not getting the amount of serotonin it needs. So that's where people start getting addicted to coffee. And I know if I start drinking coffee, that's because something's going wrong in my gut. Or even if I get like a sinus infection, usually that's related to mucus buildup in my gut that's expressing itself.
Wow.
So how about you? Do you pay attention to gut health?
Yeah, that's something that I've like really gotten into. I drink like a ton of kefir now, a lot of kombucha. And I follow it a lot more. It definitely seems like a lot newer, but I have noticed like I have more energy. Like I'm having less digestive issues, and like I think since I've been doing it, I feel better. So that's good.
Yeah, there's a great book on that called The Mind-Gut Connection.
Oh yeah.
You read it?
No, but someone on the Tim Ferriss podcast I think recommended that. Yeah.
It's crazy. All the studies done on how important your gut bacteria health is to your brain. And it happens immediately, yet no doctors are trained on nutrition.
So, which is crazy, right?
Yeah, like I feel another part of my work long term is to help people sort of get in touch with this intuition and find this individual food path that allows them to experience this natural health, because preventative healthcare has to be the way forward. Like, you're not going to go to a doctor anymore and have them tell you what's wrong with your body. It's
Right.
doctors by law are only allowed to spend 15 minutes with you in a room,
Hmm.
which I've never talked to someone for 15 minutes and been able to tell them something accurate.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. Oh.
So just because of the way that the system is set up, preventative healthcare is highly important.
Yeah, it's sad to like think about, I feel like, but I mean, I think it seems like there's a lot, a lot of doctors are kind of like pioneering all this stuff, like gut health and stuff like that, but so like it's at its infancy days. Seems like, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not widespread. It's not accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
But so much can be done, as you and I know, so much can be done with regular exercise,
Right.
meditation, and nutrition. Those are like the triangle foundation for everyone's life should be, prioritizing those three things. You have to cook your food these days. Unfortunately, we live in this like sort of war zone of groceries
Yeah.
where you should be afraid of like a lot of the foods that are readily available to you in terms of long-term health. Mark Hyman is a great person to read.
Oh yeah, he's great. Yeah. I listened to he's like interviewed on all the podcast ones I listen to, so I keep hearing, but it's like, every time it's like you get something different out of it. But he's great.
Yeah, he's definitely pioneering. Andrew Weil also.
Oh yeah.
Holistic health.
Yeah.
Has a lot of good, and he focuses a lot on breath work too, which is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on like how to even start meditating? Because I think people are starting to become interested in it, but it's still kind of, like not everyone does it.
Yeah, it was really hard for me to start meditating, actually.
Yeah.
Like
Me
in
too.
the beginning, I could only do 5 minutes, and I was like,
Right.
how do people do this?
Yeah.
So I guess when I started 3 years ago, there weren't all these tools, but one thing I use is Insight Timer.
Oh yeah.
The app has like thousands of different meditations.
Yeah, and it's free too.
I would definitely start with a guided meditation so that you know what you're doing, so you're not just like listening in the dark.
Yeah.
Now I tend to listen to binaural beats, which is like a way to get to your theta brain waves quicker.
Oh.
There's certain intonations that like bring you down to that state.
Oh, cool.
And then I tend to write afterwards to just see what thoughts come out. And
because it's more like subconscious.
Yeah, definitely. I would say start with a guided meditation and one of the apps like Headspace or.
Yeah, that's how I started.
With Headspace.
Yeah.
Don't meditate on the train. I don't know why people tell you to meditate on the train. It's like takes a lot of skill to be able to tune out the noise.
Well, so Headspace has like a commuting meditation that actually helps sometimes.
It does. You like
Yeah,
it?
yeah. But it's more like mindfulness than it is like meditation. But it helps. Like sometimes I listen to it and I'm like, okay, these people don't piss me off so much anymore. So
I have definitely done it on the train, and it does help to close your eyes. And you can do like if you're gonna do any breath work, I think the best one, the easiest one, is just to breathe in for 4, hold for 4, and then release for 8. Double the time
prana, right?
Yeah, and it like I do 3 of those, and I drop down my anxiety level.
Yeah. I use an app for that. I think it's called like Prana Breath.
Oh, cool.
Sometimes it's hard though, like because I have asthma, so sometimes I'm like dying.
After 4 counts?
No, not after 4 counts. Usually like after 5 minutes, I'm like, man, this is getting like tough, But it's good. It's challenging, and it like definitely wakes me up. I notice like when I'm tired, I'll do it, and I'm like, ooh, like I feel good now.
The other thing that I think is so radical is Wayne Dyer's meditation. You wake up in the morning and you do, you say ah, and you breathe in, and you go ah, and it just clears everything out of your lungs, and you wake up so much. It's like a root chakra.
Is that why in yoga, like, everyone does like the instinct, like thing, or is that just
I don't know
different?
why for they say actually.
But you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I'm like, this sounds cool, but I wonder why we're doing this.
I think they all have different things. It goes back to chanting.
Okay.
Chanting. It does have like a profound effect on brain waves.
Oh, maybe that's why. It's like harmony or something. I don't know. Something about it.
Yoga is good for you. Yoga is good for everyone.
Yeah. I do a lot of yoga, and actually, like, I do notice, like, I feel like a lot more calm. Where I used to be like super. I'm still pretty hyper, but less hyper now.
Yeah,
So it helps.
it's really, so there are definitely studies that show that it helps improves your focus. And for me, getting off Adderall, that was like the primary thing, because Adderall really was masking my intuition, and I pick up on other people's energy and I know what they're thinking, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
you're right. Yeah.
But if I can meditate, and I do it in the middle of the day, at work, I can refocus and sort of better acclimate to doing like one thing at a time, as opposed to being like, book and like dishes and whatever, all the things.
Yeah, how do you suggest, like, because at work I feel like sometimes it's hard to like get away to meditate, right? So how do you go about doing that?
Well, now that it's warm, I go outside in the grass and I do it like in the park.
Okay. Like during your lunch break?
During my lunch break, yeah, I'll meditate for 10 minutes. Or I'll find like we have these little pods that you can sit in that nobody can see you. So I'll go in there and I'll pull up my hood of my jacket to have like more privacy. Or if you can just find like a little conference room.
Yeah, I used to do that all the time, like just chill in the conference room. You just meditate.
You gotta get a little gangster though about your meditation, because I like asked our HR and they were like, "What? You don't meditate?" I'm like, "No, we're doing work here. I need to like conference room for stuff."
Yeah. So do you foresee like in the future where that'll become more of like a common thing where like companies will have like set times to meditate? Because I feel like, I mean, we know the data shows it helps, but I wonder why, you know.
I don't know about set times to meditate, because I think forcing anything on your employees never
Well, not
works.
forced, but just have like the option to even do it. Like, you know, most companies there's, unless you work at like Google or something like that, it's like it's hard to find. Yeah.
I hope so. I think, there are going to be a lot more studies about how it increases productivity and reduces anxiety and stress, which then results in making better choices with your food and exercise. So yeah, I think it's flooding the workplace for sure. There are meditation teachers all the time. We
Yeah.
have people come in and do like massages, meditation, yoga. So it's definitely a thing in New York, at least.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. I remember when I was working at AlphaServe, we had like a wellness day where like a nutritionist would come in and like a holistic. Yeah, it was cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is. I think that's only for like New York though, right?
I'm not even sure. I'm sure in LA they do the same.
All right, yeah, like yeah, major cities. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Cool.
I promised you an hour. It's been an hour.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much. This is amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Megan.
There's so much to talk about.
Yeah, we'll have you back.